Oh, City Parker, on behalf of Plaintiff, Your Honor, I apologize.
Robert Eglett and Maggie D. Federico on behalf of plaintiff, Your Honor.
Brianna Sitzler for plaintiff.
Eric Cumberland for plaintiff.
Brad Johnson, Tyler Watson, Mike Esposito, and Eric Freeman on behalf of the defendant.
All right. I guess we can proceed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is really kind of the first time I've had to speak directly to you. I did speak to, I think there's 4 of you from the second group here, 4 or 5 of you, and I did the introduction of the case to you guys, and Mr. Parker had done it for the first group. But my name is Robert Eglett. I am the senior partner in Eglett Law Group, and we have the privilege of representing Lisa King in this case. Everything I'm about to tell you, we will prove to be true with the evidence in this case. Everything. When it comes to the bottled water we drink, what do we expect as a public? When it comes to the bottled water we drink, we have the right to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And when it comes to the bottled water we drink, we expect the bottled water companies to follow the rules in our country. And what are those basic, fundamental societal rules? 1, every person in every company, including bottled water companies, are not allowed to endanger the public. 2, bottled water companies that endanger the public are responsible for all the harms and losses caused to the public. 3, bottled water companies' primary concern when manufacturing, distributing, and selling their bottled water should be the safety of the public and their customers. And if a bottled water company manufactures, distributes, or sells unreasonably dangerous or defective bottled water, they and they alone are responsible for all the harms and losses their bottled water causes. Simple, basic rules. And that's what this case is about. Everyone and every company in our country is expected to tell the truth and follow the laws. Real Water did neither. As Mr. Kemp has explained to you in great detail, Real Water began manufacturing Real Water brand bottled alkaline water in 2008 using a proprietary mineral concentrate called electron energized E2 concentrate to achieve a stable negative ionization. I'm just going to summarize for you and hit some of the highlights of what Mr. Kemp told you, and then focus on how they relate to Lisa King. Real Water was produced by passing filtered municipal water through electrically charged titanium tubing to separate positive and negative water, and then adding the E2 concentrate and electrolytes to create alkaline water. During the manufacturing process, all Real Water products became contaminated with hydrazine. Hydrazine is a toxic chemical commonly used in rocket fuel and known to cause severe liver, neurological, gastrointestinal, and other severe adverse effects to humans. Real Water was producing hydrazine during the electrolysis process employed to manufacture the E2 concentrate. And the E2 concentrate was used to make all the finished Real Water product that was sold and distributed for human consumption. This clicker's not working real well, Brendan. Keep going and see. And thus, all Real Water products were contaminated with hydrazine. Now, this young man who was vice president of Real Water, had no education of any kind in chemistry and no experience making alkaline water before he started making real water. But he was the only one in the company, as Mr. Kemp told you, from 2011 to 2021 who made the concentrate in those white jugs there, where hydrazine was created. From 2008 to 2011, John Marlowe, who invented the process and sold or licensed it to Real Water, made the E2 concentrate until he trained Real Water's vice president how to make concentrate that caused hydrazine to end up in the water. John Marlowe did have a college degree, but it was in architecture, not chemistry. And in fact, as Mr. Kemp told you, he flunked chemistry in college. And Marlowe obtained the titanium tubes that were used by him and Real Water to make the concentrate from 3 Russians. And neither he nor anyone else did any testing on the titanium tubes or really even knew what they were made of. Every expert in this case, both plaintiffs and defendants, have agreed that hydrazine causes severe liver injury. And defendants have no experts or evidence to dispute that all of Lisa King's and the other injured plaintiffs here injuries were caused by anything but Real Water. However, Real Water was marketed as being healthier than regular water. Its label described it as the healthiest drinking water available today, and said since Real Water is alkalized and negative ionized, it can help your body to become alkalized to improve your health. Now, why hydrazine contamination in Real Water caused multiple earlier outbreaks of acute non-viral hepatitis and acute liver failure, one particular outbreak, which Mr. Kemp talked to you about, occurred in late 2020, prompted a public investigation into Real Water. The FDA was alerted to 5 cases of acute non-viral hepatitis, resulting in acute liver failure in infants and babies and children that occurred in 2020. The children were transported to Primary Children's Hospital by jet in Salt Lake City for potential liver transplants, and their treater, Dr. Guthrie, reported their cases to the Southern Nevada Health Department. The patients came from 4 separate households. Although the cause was unknown at the time, all 5 patients were reported to have consumed Real Water. 5 other people, 2 adults and 3 children from 2 of the other households, were reported to have experienced other symptoms such as fever, vomiting, nausea, loss of appetite, and fatigue. The FDA, the CDC, and the Southern Nevada Health Department launched a joint investigation into the outbreak, and in 2021 announced that the consumption of Real Water was the only common link identified among all the potential causes. However, many other customers, including Lisa King, drank Real Water and were injured before 2020. Real Water received numerous customer complaints before 2020, as Mr. Kemp talked to you about, and customers suffered liver injuries before 2020. Lisa King, Andrea Bourdonnais, and James Delmar, all plaintiffs in this case, became ill in 2018. And on March 16th, 2021, the FDA issued an inspection assignment for Real Water. The FDA team reviewed distribution processing and product formulation documentation for all Real Water alkaline water products produced from August 20th, 2020 to March 31st, 2021, and issued the following observations. 1, lack of a food safety plan. 2, lack of a written food safety plan, I should say. Failure to identify a known or reasonably foreseeable hazard that required a preventative control. 3, lack of validation that process controls were adequate to control hazards. 4, lack of process monitoring records. 5, lack of records at the plant pertaining to physical inspection of equipment used for treatment of the product water, including the type and date of physical inspections of equipment, conditions found, and performance and effectiveness of equipment. 6, failure to maintain records of cleaning and sanitizing solutions. 7, failure to identify each unit package from a batch of bottled drinking water with a production code which identifies the particular batch and day produced. 8, failure to sample and test cleaning and sanitizing solutions as often as necessary to assure adequate performance. And 9, failure to take and analyze samples of bottled drinking water for bacteriological testing at least once a week. The CDC published a CDC health advisory noting a link between cases of acute non-viral hepatitis and consumption of real water. On April 26, 2021, the Southern Nevada Health Department announced that it had identified 6 additional probable cases and 1 suspected case of acute non-viral hepatitis associated with real water. On May 20th, 2021, the Southern Nevada Health Department reported 5 more probable cases, one of which resulted in death, linked to its investigation of acute non-viral hepatitis illness in Clark County. The investigation ultimately uncovered a total of 21 probable cases from 2020 and 4 suspected cases of acute non-viral hepatitis occurring in November and December 2020. All of the probable cases and 2 of the suspected cases were hospitalized for their illnesses, and 1 person died. All of the patients, all of them, drank real water. Also in 2021, a group of doctors at Loma Linda University Medical Center, and Mr. Kemp called this the Burke article. Mr. Parker and I tend to call it the Loma Linda article, but it's the same article. And all of them these doctors who had treated some of the plaintiffs, including Lisa King, published an article titled Acute Liver Failure Due to Manufactured Alkaline Water, a case series of real water-induced liver injury, or the Loma Linda article. The Loma Linda article reported the clinical presentation of 4 unpublished cases of real water-induced liver injury resulting in acute liver failure. All of the patients reported on the Loma Linda article were seen by providers at Loma Linda University Medical Center or the Las Vegas campus for Loma Linda and were hospitalized in October and November 2020. All 4 patients consumed real water before their sudden onset of acute liver failure and had negative viral hepatitis panels and liver biopsies inconsistent with viral hepatitis. The authors noted that all other potential causes of the patient's acute liver failure were ruled out and that the only potential cause was real water. Lisa, although not one of the 4 patients included in the Loma Linda article, also received treatment for her autoimmune hepatitis, and I'll talk to you about what that is in a little bit, at Loma Linda University. But did real water tell the truth about its bottled water. Because when it comes to the bottled water we drink, we should be told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Real water did the exact opposite. There were dozens of customer complaints, as Mr. Kemp told you, regarding real water purchased as far back as 2008, the first year real water was produced bottled water. And real water received at least 20 customer complaints before the 2020 outbreak. Just a sample of these complaints. Some of them Mr. Kemp went over. I'm sorry to repeat them, but a sample of these complaints include, in 2008, a customer complained of upset stomach and headache after drinking real water. Louis Kessler, a longtime real water customer who lives in California, submitted a customer complaint to Real Water. Ms. Kessler purchased bottles of real water from California grocery stores and developed liver problems, and her liver function test spiked very high, and then returned to normal once she stopped drinking real water. In 2018, Mr. Kemp talked about this case. Stephen Watkins drank real water, developed liver failure, and was hospitalized. And his wife wrote an email on June 20th, 2018 that explicitly stated that his doctor attributed his injuries to real water. There were also 3 significant complaints from customers who purchased real water at Terrible Herbst in 2014. These complaints documented a strong chemical smell and what appeared as an oily and gasoline-like substance in the water. Dr. Najam, Mr. Kemp talked about him as a civil engineer and an expert in water quality and treatment solutions, and is board certified in environmental engineering, and he will testify that hydrazine is a colorless, oily liquid with an ammonia-like chemical odor. And he will tell you that at high enough concentrates in the water, hydrazine may give the water an oily sheen and/or chemical smell. In 2017, another customer complained that a retail bottle of real water purchased at a gas station had a foul smell and tasted like chemicals. And another customer in 2017 complained that real water burned her throat and upset her stomach. And a third customer in 2017 complained that after drinking real water, she had severe intestinal cramping, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. And a fourth customer in 2017 complained that after drinking real water, he had severe symptoms of confusion, hand tremors, nausea, and vomiting, as well as lingering memory issues. This evidence of a contaminant like hydrazine in the bottles of real water goes back 13 years before the government's reports were published about real water. Yet none of these complaints, none of them, were investigated by Real Water. Instead of being logged and investigated, the customer complaints were handled by a receptionist who apparently became the quality control person, who was instructed to just send free real water to any customer that submitted a complaint. Nothing else. So instead of investigating the complaints and testing the water, Real Water sent free bottles of water that was actually causing these customers injuries and illnesses for these same customers to drink more of. Mr. Kemp talked about Jeffrey Desital, who Real Water identified as their director of quality control. And he agreed that he never investigated customer complaints, that no one at Real Water ever told him he was the quality control director, and that he understood his actual role was production manager. In fact, Desital confirmed that he had never seen any of the customer complaints before 2019. So this leads us to 2 more important rules that apply here. 5, a bottled water company that consciously disregards the safety of the public should be made an example of to discourage other bottled water companies from acting in a similar fashion. And 6, a bottled water company that places profits over safety consciously disregards the safety of the public. And so at the end of this case, you will be tasked with answering the questions. 1, did Real Water consciously disregard the safety of the public when they had numerous complaints about their bottled water going back to as early as 2008, when they failed to have a quality assurance manager, when they failed to investigate the complaints or even properly test their water or equipment? And 2, did Real Water not have these safety protocols in place, ignore these complaints, and not test their water or their equipment, and just keep selling Real Water because they placed their profits over the safety of their customers and the public? Anthony Randolph, another gentleman Mr. Kemp told you about. He was in charge of sales for Real Water. He knew the customers were getting sick and that Real Water Vice President Blaine Jones was hospitalized at one point. And Anthony Randolph knew that Real Water was getting many complaints. And when he looks into this himself and realizes that it has to be the water that is making people sick, because the people he knows who are getting sick don't know each other, and they have the same symptoms, but the one thing they are all doing is drinking Real Water. And so he goes to talk to Real Water's vice president and tells him he knows he got sick and was in the hospital, and asks him what happened. And after Real Water's vice president explains what happened, he immediately tells Real Water's vice president, "You must do a recall. There's something wrong with the water." He tells him he knows other people who are drinking Real Water and getting sick and have the same symptoms, and the only thing they have in common is they are drinking Real Water. But Real Water refuses to do a recall. Why? As this case is presented to you, you will need to ask yourself, why would Real Water refuse? As the evidence is presented to you, you will need to ask yourself, why would Real Water not tell their customers or the public the truth? Then you will need to ask yourself, what would happen to their sales if they did? And so as the evidence is presented, you'll need to ask yourself, did Real Water consciously disregard the safety of the public? And if they did they do it because they placed their profits over public safety? Now, in most cases like this, the first question the jury is required to answer is liability, whether the defendant's product was unreasonably dangerous and thus defective. However, as you've been told multiple times now by the court, you will not have to answer that question in this trial, because the court has already ruled as a matter of law that Real Water is unreasonably dangerous and thus defective. Also, in most cases, as you've been told, the second question the jury usually has to answer is, did the defective product cause the injured plaintiff's injuries? However, also, you have been told multiple times by the court that the court has already ruled as a matter of law that Real Water did in fact cause all of the plaintiff's injuries and illnesses. So the only questions you'll be required to answer in this case are, 1, what is the amount of money it will take to balance the permanent harms and losses that Lisa King and the other plaintiffs have suffered and will continue to suffer for the rest of their lives? And 2, Did Real Water act with conscious disregard for the safety of the public and their customers? And if you answer yes to that question, 3, you will need to decide what is the amount of exemplary damages or punitive damages it will require to deter other bottled water companies from acting in a similar fashion. So what are the consequences of Real Water's decisions and actions as it relates to Lisa King? The consequences that Real Water knew that there was a problem with their bottled water, and yet didn't investigate, didn't test, and didn't tell their customers or the public the truth. This is a photo of Lisa King before she got sick. Lisa's sitting right back there. Raise your hand, Lisa. Lisa is a fighter. Lisa is 52 years old and was born in 1973 right here in Las Vegas at Women's Hospital. Lisa's mom, Helene, is born in Brooklyn, New York in 1949, a few years after World War II, and her mom's dad, Lisa's grandfather, is a police officer in Brooklyn at this time. And her grandfather and grandmother, along with Lisa's mom, Helene, and her mom's brother, moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where Lisa's grandfather continues to work as a police officer. They stay in Phoenix until Helene and her brother graduate high school, and then they all moved, the whole family, to Las Vegas. Lisa's parents are Helene and Steve Medina. Lisa's parents meet in Las Vegas and are married 2 to 3 years before Lisa is born, and when Lisa is very young, her mom works as a Keno cocktail waitress at the Stardust Hotel and Casino. And at the same time, her dad, Steve, works as a maitre d' at one of the restaurants at the original MGM Grand Hotel here in Las Vegas. Her parents are not well off by any means and lived in one of the poor areas in North Las Vegas, the same neighborhood I grew up in, coincidentally. And since both Lisa's parents are working, their neighbor, Velma, takes care of Lisa as a baby and a young child. And Velma teaches Lisa how to sew and, of course, about discipline. And Velma lives here in Las Vegas until she dies a few years ago, and Lisa continues to remain close to her and sees her often until Velma passes. Unfortunately, Helene and Steve's marriage didn't last, and they divorced when Lisa is 4 years old. And Lisa has 2 older brothers she grows up with, who are her mom's children from her first marriage. About a year after her divorce from Steve, Lisa's mom meets Alan Cowger, who becomes Lisa's stepdad. And when Helene and Alan, when Helene and Alan marry, he becomes her stepdad. There is a shooting at the elementary school across from their home in Las Vegas, and Helene decides she doesn't want to raise her kids in Las Vegas, and so shortly after Lisa and her 2 brothers and Helene and Alan moved to Grants Pass, Oregon, where Alan grew up. Grants Pass is a small town in South Oregon, so it's quite a change from the streets of North Las Vegas. In Grants Pass, they have an acre of land they live on with a barn with 2 of many animals, such as horses, donkeys, and goats, and many chickens and geese. And they grow their own fruit and vegetables and spend their vacations camping and fishing in the mountains of Oregon. Lisa's stepdad, Alan, works as a superintendent at a lumber mill, and her mom is a substitute 3rd grade teacher. Alan becomes the man Lisa considers her dad as she grows up. And Lisa goes to elementary school, middle school, and high school in Grants Pass. She's an A student. And she starts playing the snare drums in the 5th grade and performs in the high school marching band and plays softball and volleyball throughout high school. She's in the choir and she's a cheerleader. She graduates with a 4.0 grade point average, despite some major obstacles she has to overcome. Lisa begins dating her high school sweetheart, Paul, when she is a freshman. Paul is a couple of years older than Lisa, but their relationship continues when Paul goes off to college at Oregon State. And even though Lisa is being responsible by taking birth control, she nevertheless gets pregnant during her junior year of high school.
I have to object, I don't know what this is going to.
Your Honor, I'm allowed to tell the story of my client's life, and I do not like being interrupted.
Your Honor, I'm allowed to make an objection, and by definition, I have to interrupt. This is not what's going to be presented to the jury.
This is exactly what's going to be presented to the jury counsel. You don't know.
I would like to voice my objection. Opening statement is where the evidence is going to be presented to this jury, where someone worked in a logging company and where they went to elementary school has nothing to do with this case. And it's been going on, and out of respect for counsel, I did not object. The cow is not too far.
This evidence will be presented, and it's my client's life story. Thank you, Your Honor.
Continue.
So during her junior year, she becomes pregnant. But she has her baby, Courtney, and still graduates high school in 1991, on time in 4 years, with a 4.80 grade point average. Lisa and her entire family then moved back to Las Vegas after Lisa graduates in 1991, along with Lisa's daughter, Courtney, and Courtney's dad, Paul. Lisa's grandparents and her mom's brother still live in Las Vegas and still do to this day. Unfortunately, when they move back to Las Vegas, Paul gets caught up in the nightlife temptations in Las Vegas, as some people do, and begins to party much too much. They're not married, so Lisa ends their relationship and unfortunately has to terminate Paul's parental rights because of Paul's new lifestyle. Shortly after moving back to Las Vegas, Lisa starts working for the Nevada Cancer Society. She wants to work there because a family member of hers got sick with cancer when she was in high school. And this is where Lisa tries her hand at marketing for the medical industry for the first time. She turns out to be very, very good at it. And she continues to hold marketing positions at many different healthcare companies. And Lisa works her way up to her current position as Area Vice President of National Business Development at Gentiva, where she oversees marketing and sales for 12 states, and she shortly becomes the top producer at her company. Going back to Lisa's personal life, in 1994, Lisa marries William Pershing, who is an executive chef, but the marriage is short-lived. And a number of years later, Lisa marries Michael King, Lisa's son, Porter's dad. Michael is a performer in a show on the Strip called Starlight Express until he is injured on the job and becomes a production manager. He goes on to get his MBA and works in healthcare until he dies. Their marriage ends after 3 or 4 years, and they divorce before Michael gets sick. In 2010, Lisa marries for a third time, this time to Ryan Harris, and they stay together for 7 years, but ultimately part ways. This is a photo of Lisa with her 2 kids, Courtney and Porter. Lisa and her children are very close, and even though Courtney and Porter are adults now and have their own lives, they all make sure they have a family night together at least one night a month. And they talk often on the phone. In fact, Porter calls his mom every day, and Lisa sees Courtney at least every 2 weeks because Courtney is a lash technician and does Lisa's lashes every 2 weeks. Lisa's son Porter is a respiratory therapist and lives with Lisa until about a year ago. And when Lisa's symptoms because of real water begin, Porter is an EMT. And Porter personally witnesses what his mom goes through on a daily basis. And at this time, he sleeps on the couch outside her door at night in case Lisa stops breathing from her throat closing from her myasthenia gravis. And I will explain what that is in a few minutes. Porter often witnesses Lisa's speech slur because of her myasthenia gravis, and has witnessed firsthand many of her debilitating symptoms from her liver damage injuries caused by real water, which I will also talk about shortly. Lisa does have what we call in this modern age a partner named Brent Mills, who you will also hear from, who she lives with. Brent has a degree in music from the University of California, and he is a self-employed music producer and creates dance music for, which is licensed for TV shows like You Think You Can Dance and other shows. Lisa and Brent meet in 2017 through Latin dance lessons and have lived together since 2018. So Brent has been with Lisa throughout this ordeal since her symptoms began. Lisa is a fighter, and she has been her whole life, and whenever there is a challenge in her life, she never cowers. Lisa fights through it. This is a photo of Lisa competing in a Muay Thai fight. So Lisa is not just a fighter in how she overcomes challenges in her life, she is literally a fighter as well. Lisa wanted to learn martial arts as a kid, ever since she's seen the movie Karate Kid, but her mom said no, because she wanted her to do girly things, and quite frankly, it was expensive and they couldn't really afford it. So after Lisa moves back to Las Vegas after high school, she starts taking Muay Thai lessons and training, and she turns out to be very good and ends up earning her black belt. Now there are only a few female professional Muay Thai fighters in the world at this time, but eventually Lisa starts competing. Then her trainer, Thai master Toddy, who knows Lisa does marketing, begins to often ask her to negotiate for the event spaces for the fights he promotes. And this eventually leads him to ask her to commentate a fight because the scheduled commentator drops out. By the way, while Lisa is competing professionally, she has 7 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. Master Toddy then starts having Lisa commentate or announce at the fights he's promoting. And at one fight, there are some ESPN producers there, and Lisa talks to them about all the male fighters, how all the male fighters are competing on TV, but not any women. So they ask her to storyboard a show for them, and she does. And then they end up sending her to Thailand for a number of weeks and film a show called Fight Girls for the Oxygen Channel. Some of you may have seen that before. She stars as one of the competitors in the show, and she wins the fight competition that first season and later comes back as a trainer on the show. Because of this show, Lisa keeps getting calls to commentate fights for TV, and she does so for NBC and ESPN and other networks. And she even appears on the Today Show and Good Morning America. Lisa is featured in Black Belt Magazine, Woman of the Year in 2007, and she is inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame. And she is also featured in the Martial Arts History Museum. Now you will learn, you're going to learn that Lisa gets her fight nickname, the Black Widow, because her son Porter sees the movie Catwoman and starts telling everyone that his mom is a superhero too. So people start calling Lisa the Black Widow because Muay Thai is a sport of 8 limbs and spiders have 8 limbs. And also Lisa admits that her friends and colleagues coined that name for her because her relationships before Brent never seemed to work out, much like a black widow devours their mate after they conceive. So Lisa has also spent considerable time volunteering and giving back to her community. Lisa is active in the Alzheimer's Association, has hosted fundraiser events for them, such as the Walk to End Alzheimer's and Charity Mixers. She's on the board of the American Lung Association and does their TV and radio interviews. During her fight career, she taught women's self-defense classes, and she also volunteered to speak at schools to empower kids to find their inner champion. The kids she worked with wrote her thank you notes and delivered them to her Muay Thai gym. So now let's talk about Lisa's consumption of real water. Lisa drinks real water from 2014 to 2019 from several different sources. Lisa begins drinking real water in 2014 when she becomes the ring announcer for Real MMA. Real MMA is a mixed martial arts company that promotes mixed martial arts fights, and Real MMA is also owned by Real Water. As part of Lisa's employment with Real MMA, she is required to attend pre-planning meetings as well as weigh-ins before the fights and the fights themselves, and she also films commercials for the events. Lisa is given free 1-liter bottles of real water at each of these employment events between 2014 and 2016, or 2016, and she attends 12 to 14 employment events with Real Water MMA each year. She drinks 1 to 2 bottles of real water at each of these events. She continues to attend these events until April 2019, when her employment with Real MMA ends. Lisa also occasionally purchases real water purchases at grocery stores in 2014 and 2015, and the consumption of real water compared to her other brands increases in 2016 when she becomes more conscious about picking up real water as opposed to the other brands at the stores. And by 2016, Real Water has become Lisa's exclusive choice of drinking water. During this period, Lisa works in medical marketing and sales as her day job, and a role that requires her to travel across Las Vegas for various meetings, and while on these trips, she often stops at various grocery stores or stores where she purchases bottled real water. In 2016 and 2017, Lisa is stopping to buy real water approximately 2 to 3 times per week and buys 1 to 2 large bottles each time she stops. She continues to purchase real water at various stores during her work travels until 2019. Since Lisa is a social media influencer, in 2017 she also begins receiving 2 to 3 cases of 1-liter bottles of free real water each month in exchange for posting about real water on her social media pages. So by 2017, with the addition of the free cases, Lisa is drinking about 40 ounces of real water every day. And on June 12, 2018, she signs up for the home delivery subscription for the 5-gallon real water jugs you see there. And Lisa receives 4 to 6 of these 5-gallon real water jugs at her home per month. And so now she routinely refills her retail bottles from the 5-gallon jugs at her home, and so the frequency of her stopping at various stores to pick up real water diminishes. And then she signs up, when she signs up for Real Water's delivery service in 2018. And with the addition of the 5-gallon jugs, her sources of consumption, Lisa is now consuming approximately 280 ounces of real water each week. Lisa drinks real water from 5-gallon jugs until July 2019, when she cancels her subscription because she is moving. Now, why did I go in such detail through all this real water she got, right? The reason is I went through this. The amount of consumption of real water in such detail is to show you that Lisa drank an enormous amount of real water, and probably more real water than anyone in this case, which may partly explain why her injuries and illnesses may seem so much worse. And that's not to imply that any of the other injured plaintiffs here are not all seriously and traumatically and permanently injured. They are. And they are just as entitled as Lisa to be fully compensated for their suffering. But back to Lisa. As a result of drinking hydrazine in real water, Lisa's liver is permanently damaged, and she develops 2 severe and permanent autoimmune disorders. First, autoimmune hepatitis, or AIH. And then second, myasthenia gravis, or MG. You may refer, me and others refer to it. Autoimmune hepatitis is a rare, chronic, inflammatory liver disease. The disease begins when a patient's immune system mistakenly attacks healthy liver cells with antibodies meant to attack liver infections. This causes chronic inflammation in the liver and leads to permanent liver damage and can progress to liver failure and can even progress to death. Autoimmune hepatitis causes abdominal pain, a swollen abdomen, extreme nausea, violent vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, joint pain, and skin rashes. All symptoms Lisa suffers from. Patients with autoimmune hepatitis have elevated liver function tests such as AST and ALT levels, and Mr. Kemp went over these tests in detail with you. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say that her AST and ALT levels were first tested in 2019 and were very high and have remained consistently high. And even though we have told you that the judge has already ruled as a matter of law that all of the plaintiff's injuries and illnesses here were caused by real water, to make sure you're 100% at ease, Dr. Singh, who is an expert in statistics, will tell you, he will be here, that the odds of 3 women in Southern Nevada, Lisa King, Andrea Bourdonnais, and Leila Kaba, who all drank real water in the first quarter of 2018 and afterward developed autoimmune hepatitis, contracted their autoimmune hepatitis from another source other than real water, is a 7.69 billion to 1 odds ratio. For context, the population of the Earth was only 7.6 billion people in 2018. Myasthenia gravis, MG, is a chronic autoimmune disease that is caused when the body's immune system mistakenly attacks proteins in the neuromuscular junction, where the nerves connect to muscles. This results in skeletal muscle weakness, meaning weakness in the muscles that connect to the bones. The most commonly targeted muscles are the muscles in the eyes, the face, the neck, the spine, the arms, and the legs. MG causes severe weakness in the bulbar muscles, which are the group of muscles in the head and neck responsible for speech, swallowing, chewing, and jaw movement, as well as respiratory muscles, which may result in respiratory weakness requiring mechanical ventilation. So myasthenia gravis affects a patient's ability to do things like chew, swallow, talk, and walk, and can cause tremors, slurred speech, blurred or double vision, droopy eyelids, and limited facial expressions. People who suffer from MG often have difficulty climbing stairs, getting up from chairs, and raising their arms above their head. Many patients experience intermittent worsening of symptoms triggered by infection, emotional distress, surgeries, or medication. Most MG patients develop these symptoms at some point. It is a horribly debilitating disease. And although they are distinct disorders, MG shares many of the same symptoms of ALS, including muscle weakness, speech dysfunction, and difficulty swallowing. Because of this, MG is often mistaken for ALS. MG is the most common autoimmune disorder that affects the neuromuscular junction and can result in significant morbidity and even death. And most MG patients will develop generalized symptoms within 2 years of disease onset. Lisa has experienced every single one of these symptoms. As Lisa's medical records explain, she was officially diagnosed with MG in May of 2019, but she had been having symptoms since September of 2018, including tremors, including hand and leg tremors, twitching from her cheek to her mouth, vision changes and eye discharge, fatigue, itching, and swelling eyes, palpitations, dizziness, throat discomfort, where her throat feels like it's closing up and her airway becomes extremely small and it's difficult to breathe, and difficulty swallowing, dyspnea, choking episodes, and pain in her arm, difficulty breathing and swallowing, facial twitching, and internal tremors. On May 21st, 2019, Dr. Mahajan, Lisa's neurologist's assessment includes facial nerve injury. Now, this is a working diagnosis, and Dr. Mahajan will tell you that. This is a working diagnosis. Turns out it ends up to be one of the results or the symptoms of the myasthenia gravis he diagnoses her with. And his notes reflect that Lisa was complaining of a chronic tingling sensation and pain in her cheeks and muscle tremors. And on June 19, 2019, Dr. Mahajan's assessment again includes facial nerve injury and states that Lisa's chief complaint was tingling in the face and generalized diffused shaking. And on June 24, 2019, Dr. Mahajan's assessment included facial nerve injury, MG, and neck stiffness. And his notes describe dysesthesia, or tingling in the face, and generalized diffused shaking. His notes for the date also say reported tightening in her neck that sent her to Summerlin Hospital because she could not breathe, along with vocal cord weakness and fatigue. On June 25th, 2019, Dr. Mahajan sends Lisa to the ER at Centennial Hills Hospital, where she is admitted into the hospital for IVIG, or intravenous immunoglobulin treatment, over 3 days. IVIG is a therapy. IVIG therapy is an IV infusion treatment done in multiple rounds over 1 to 3 days. And I will explain more about that in a minute. On August 22nd, 2019, Dr. Mahajan's notes reflect Lisa's complaints of difficulty swallowing, difficulty speaking, facial twitching, and muscle spasms, transient pressure in her neck, over her carotids, and blurry vision, for which Dr. Mahajan sends her to the hospital for MG exacerbation and 3 days of IVIG treatment. On October 2nd, 2019, Dr. Mahajan's notes say that Lisa has continued to experience dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing, twitching all over her body and muscle spasms, and vision disturbances. And on January 6, 2020, Lisa complains of constant back spasms, weakness in both legs, tightness in her throat, and Dr. Mahajan's assessment includes, again, a working diagnosis of facial injury that he will explain just stays in the note. Neck stiffness, slurred speech, gait disturbance, leg cramping, vocal cord paralysis, speech abnormality, and tremors. Over the last less than 6 years, Lisa has endured 21 IVIG rounds for her MG. And according to her neurologist, Dr. Mahajan, she will require 2 rounds of IVIG treatments monthly or 12 times a year for the rest of her life. Because she will be receiving IVIG treatments so often now, it will require that an intravenous access port called an A port be permanently placed in her breasts, which brings its own complications. And this A port will need to be replaced every 5 years. Her most recent IVIG treatment was less than 3 weeks ago. Lisa was admitted to Centennial Hills on Valentine's Day and was there for 3 rounds through February 16th. The IVIG treatment makes Lisa feel worse before she then starts feeling better like she is now. She has flu-like symptoms and is extremely fatigued afterward, and normally she can't even walk to the bathroom without a nurse helping her because her legs are so weak. The side effects last days to weeks, and IVIG treatment is very painful for Lisa. IVIG is purified by the pooled plasma of human blood donors. It dampens the immune system, resulting in benefits for certain autoimmune diseases. Each IVIG preparation, each one, is made from the pooled plasma of an average of 8,000 blood donors, which is then purified to contain more than 90% antibodies, which are natural proteins that your body normally makes to help you to fight infections and serve other functions for the immune system. Because it is derived from donor blood, IVIG carries with it a potential risk of transmitting infections and bloodborne diseases. While screening techniques are used, it is impossible to completely eliminate all possible viral infections from IVIG preparations. Although IVIG is extracted from plasma obtained from donors screened for infections, the potential for transmission of infectious diseases, including certain viral infections such as HIV, hepatitis B, and a neurodegenerative condition caused by faulty proteins that leads to mental deterioration, involuntary muscle movement, and other central nervous deficits that cannot be totally eliminated. Further, there is always a risk that the product contains an infection that has not yet been recognized, either because it is a previously unknown disease like COVID in 2020, or because a donor's infection was in such an early stage that their blood gave no clues. Lisa has had 21 rounds of IVIG total to date, with an average of 8,000 donors per each round, which equals 168,000 donor antibodies in her blood. According to Lisa's neurologist, Dr. Mahajan, she will require 12 IVIG treatments with an average of 2 rounds per treatment every year for the remainder of her life. If we assume Lisa lives to her statistical life expectancy of a Latino woman at age 52, which is another 34 more years, and she has 12 IVI treatments per year with an average of 2 rounds per treatment, then we can calculate the number of different donor antibodies entering her body over her lifetime. So the number of future donor antibodies with 12 treatments times 2 rounds per treatment times 34 years times 8,000 average number of 8,000 donors, it's 6,528,000 different donors, plus the 168,000 donors she's already had, is a total of just under 7 million donors' blood entering her body during her life. She is literally playing Russian roulette. These symptoms and assessments continue today. Lisa's account of her MG symptoms aligns with the symptoms reported in the medical literature and reflected in her medical records. And when Lisa recounts her MG symptoms, she often refers to a drooping and twitching in her face that she initially thought was Bell's palsy. She also describes a tremor all over her body that feels like an earthquake, and weakness in her legs that is so severe she cannot even walk to the mailbox or stand in line to mail a package. She has continual throat tightening and closing, not limited ability to breathe. Her neck stiffness and weakness and difficulty speaking or slurred speech. Lisa requires ongoing treatment for the remainder of her life to manage these conditions. So just a far cry from a stubbed toe. But, you know, what do her highly trained doctors know compared to Mr. Johnson? Both autoimmune hepatitis and myasthenia gravis are not curable. They can only be managed with medication and various other treatments. And it will not be disputed by any experts in this case that Lisa has both of these horrific conditions caused by the hydrazine in real water, and neither is curable. So she will endure them for the remainder of her life, and no one can rule out that Lisa may, and many of the other plaintiffs here, may have a relapse with respect to their liver injury, which could result in a liver transplant. And you will learn that the average liver transplant patient only lives for an average of 11.1 years after the transplant. And it can often be much shorter than that. For example, some of you may remember the co-star of the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Michelle Trachtenberg, who recently had a liver transplant and died several months later at age 39. And you will learn that for the first time in Lisa's life, this fighter who's overcome every challenge in her life, that she is afraid of her unknown future. First, from 2018 through until 2021, she had no idea why her health was so miserably failing, and no doctor could explain to her why. It is not until the FDA and Southern Nevada Health Department's investigation that Lisa had any reason to think that real water was the cause of her illnesses. And on May 17th, 2021, Lisa submits an online survey. This is in your jury notebook. Reporting herself to the Southern Nevada Health Department, reporting herself as a possible real water case after learning that real water was causing her liver problems. On May, or could be at that time, she wasn't sure, but she suspected that. On May 21st, 2021, a Southern Nevada Health Department investigator calls Lisa to gain more information about her self-report. Lisa discusses her symptoms, treatment, and real water consumption in detail. However, because her onset occurred prior to August 20, the investigator directs the case to be closed as Lisa didn't meet their probable criteria. Their probable criteria is it had to happen in 2020. That was the only thing we were looking at the time. So during those 3 years, from 2018 to 2020, she is completely in the dark that real water is causing her health problems. And now she is terrified of not knowing what will come next. And while she knows what caused her health to fail, she is simply afraid of how much worse it may get, or whether she will even make it for the long run. And you will hear how Lisa's worst fear is to be dependent on someone else. Now, you're not going to hear this from Lisa, because Lisa will never admit publicly that she is a victim, or that she is afraid, or that it has affected her mentally or emotionally. Because as I told you, she's a fighter, and she will never admit defeat publicly. It's just not in her nature. But you will hear from her family and close friends about this. And I think you will come, after hearing their testimony, to understand Lisa's fears and how she suffers in silence. And there is no dispute that they were caused by defendant's defective water that was laced with hydrazine. Lisa still experiences stomach discomfort, bloating, joint pain, and fatigue from her autoimmune hepatitis. And she gets blood work done every 3 months to monitor her liver enzyme levels, and has appointments with Loma Linda Las Vegas Liver Clinic every 6 months. It was every 3 months until a year ago. Her current myasthenia gravis symptoms go up and down and up and down and up and down, but they all continue. And when she has a flare-up, she gets muscle weakness that makes it hard for her to use her arms and her legs, as well as the sensation that her throat is tightening or closing. She has to be very conscious of her physical activity. Now, this is a woman who has worked out virtually all her life, and that has been taken from her. And stress levels, she has to monitor and keep her stress levels so as to not induce a flare-up. And she has concerns that her legs will give out, or she will slur her speech in public. This is a woman who was a sports commentator on national TV and is afraid to talk in public now. When Lisa is having a myasthenia gravis flare-up, she takes another medication and gets IVIG therapy. And her mental and emotional health continues to suffer. And I'm not going to be shy about the number here. You know, Mr. Kemp said he's not going to put up numbers. I'm never shy about that. I want you to know right up front. And so we will prove that the harms and losses Real Water has inflicted upon Lisa are permanent and astronomical. And that in order to balance the harms and losses, you heard the judge and Mr. Parker talk about this in jury selection. In order to balance those harms and losses, which is your responsibility to do that, the harms and losses caused by Real Water, Lisa will take a compensatory damages amount of $150 million or more to achieve that balance. And we will prove by clear and convincing evidence that Real Water consciously disregarded the safety of the public and their customers. And an example should be made by you with your verdict in order to deter other bottled water companies from ever acting in a similar fashion. And if we do prove that to you, and you decide that punitive or exemplary damages should be put in your verdict, we will prove that the bottled water industry is a huge and enormously profitable industry. And we will prove to you that in order for you, this jury, to fulfill your responsibility with your verdict of deterring other bottled water companies from acting in a similar fashion, it will require you to place in the exemplary damages verdict a sum of $10 billion or more. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I look forward to talking to you later in the case. Thank you.
Okay, counsel, you think we need a break?
That's what I was thinking, Your Honor. It's almost 3:30.
Agree, Mr. Johnson?
Court's pleasure, Your Honor.
Yeah, we probably have to see it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, remember you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected to the trial, or to read, watch, or listen to the report or the commentary on the trial by any person connected with this case, or by any medium of information, including publications, newspaper, television, radio. Remember the social media prohibition. And last but not least, do not form or express any opinion on any subject connected with this trial or cause of finding submitted to. State.
All right, work together. Teddy Parker for plaintiff, Your Honor.
Maggie Federico for plaintiff. Brandon Sutter for plaintiff.
Eric Peppermint for plaintiff.
Brad Johnson, Donna Watson, Michael Joe Esposito, and Eric Freeman.
Oh.
Mr. Parker, are you ready to continue?
I am, Your Honor. I am.
I should say proceed.
Proceed, continue, jump into the fray.
Aiden Green.
That is true. Hold on, this thing's on.
Look at the screen because I can't see my screen.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
rise for the jury.
Ms. Borden said she's at the point.
Please be seated.
The party stipulated the presence of the jury.
We do, Your Honor.
Defendants do as well, Your Honor.
And Mr. Parker, are you ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor. May I? Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Everyone okay? I thought it was beneficial for everyone to stand up and walk around for a second. Give us time to regather ourselves. So let me start out by saying that this is a very tragic story. I think you've learned now from the opening given by Mr. Kemp and Mr. Eglett just how tragic this story has been for many, and in particular, of course, Ms. King. But you've seen for the last 7 days now, our clients here day in and day out. It's because the tragedy that they've lived has finally come to a point where they can express it to you, where they can have the evidence of what they've gone through put in front of a community of their peers, each one of you. When I was listening to Mr. Eglett give his opening and discussing how Ms. King is a fighter, I thought about this because obviously she is, professionally as well as a fighter day to day.
You've got the two microphones.
Is that better? We good, Marshal Sloan?
Ms. Maria?
There's a microphone down at the bottom that may be picking up.
I don't know how I would.
So I think it's because I'm in so close proximity to that mic. When Mr. Eglett was over here, I don't think it picks it up.
Mr. Parker, you can move that bottom one lower as well, that might help.
You think that's better?
No, it's the one.
Well, I don't want you to do any construction work over here, Mr. Eglett. That's all right. Let's see if I keep some more distance between me and that microphone, if that works. Is that better? Shane, are we good?
We're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So as I was saying, obviously Ms. King is a fighter. But I will have to say, and I would think that you guys realize this by now, our clients are all fighters. They're here, they're going to tell their stories. They are all fighters. They've gone through hospitalizations. They've gone through what Mr. Kemp called not knowing what was causing their very serious symptoms. They've all fought through a lot. And they've been here while you've been here for the last 7 days. And I know for each one of you, this has been an undertaking. Because you have your lives and you have other things going on. But you've given time to be here. And you will see them day in and day out coming here. Now, I specifically represent Ms. Borden. She's sitting right next to Ms. King. And someone said during voir dire, and again, this is something that I picked up over the last several days. It's not a part of my formal opening to you. But the evidence in this case will support what they've gone through and what they're going through right now, today. Ms. Borden will probably not be here tomorrow, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that, because she's tried to be here every day. But 2 days before we started trial, her father had to be rushed into the hospital. He wasn't breathing. She gave him CPR, and she's been going back and forth to the hospital since this trial started. So she will probably not be here tomorrow morning. And I wanted you to know that because each of these plaintiffs are so invested in this case that they want to be here for you, and they're appreciative of the time that you're giving to them. So if you don't see her tomorrow, please don't hold it against her. That's the reason. And I'm very fortunate, we're all fortunate, that we were able to at least get to this point so I could do our opening and discuss her while she was here. Okay? Now, I said this is a tragic story, and it is. Mr. Kemp, Mr. Egglet is giving you some of the details. But you're probably going through voir dire with me for several days. You probably realize that I'm a very vital rule person. And I want to show you a timeline. I want this evidence to provide a timeline for each one of you so you can understand what these plaintiffs were going through and what was happening at Real Water while they were going through those really difficult times in their lives. It's always helpful to me if I can see a chronology because it allows me to understand, which is most important for us, why punitive damages are important in this case. So I'm giving you a framework, just like the judge said. The judge said, this is our opportunity in the opening to give you a roadmap. Well, I'm also going to give you a chronology of that roadmap. Okay, understood? Shane, let's go to the next slide, please. So the evidence in this case will reveal that Real Water consciously disregarded the rights and safety of our clients as well as the public. You will learn, as you've already heard, that 5 children were flown from here to Salt Lake City, the Children's Primary Hospital. You will also learn, which you've heard in part, that 1 senior resident of Las Vegas lost her life. What you haven't heard, I believe, that 2 younger men here had to go through 2 liver transplants. 2 younger men. Both of them are now looking at perhaps 14 years at best to live any longer. And these were men in their late 20s, early 30s, all because of Real Water. Mr. Kemp didn't mention that, and I don't believe Mr. Egglet mentioned it. But you need to know that. You need to know just how tragic this story is. These are representatives of our community that have gone through this, who are here. There are many others that you've learned through Mr. Kemp and Mr. Egglet who are not here. Hold on one second, please.
Try to
Make
move
it
it
better?
higher again, Teddy. You may be rubbing up against it.
You think?
Yeah, that's why I put on my time. Okay.
You probably didn't notice. They come to my house every morning and dress me. This is what they do. I have a little squad of people that come and help me. So we had the 5 children. When I say children, infants, who are drinking Real Water as a part of their formula. Because their mothers believed, as was marketed, that Real Water was healthier than our Nevada water. So that's how they got it. That's how they consumed it. We have children like Abraham here. We've had other children, teenagers, from infants to seniors. Real Water has been prolific in terms of the injuries it has caused. Shane, next slide, please. Now, we're going to ask you, and this is the rule of the case, this is an approach that I use. It's obviously an approach that Mr. Egglet uses, because we want you to have an understanding of where we believe the responsibilities lie when you create a defective product. Because you should be held responsible and accountable for the harms and losses caused by your product. And I use the word accountable because several of you, when indicating during voir dire what was important to you in terms of values, accountability, and integrity. The evidence in this case will show you a complete lack of both values when it comes to Real Water. Next slide, Shane. We've touched on this. Mr. Eglett has, Mr. Kemp has, but what they didn't do, they talked about it, but I said earlier, the judges said it, Mr. Johnson has said it, what we say is not evidence. So I always prefer to show you the evidence. That's what Mr. Kemp has done, that's what Mr. Eglett has done. We want to show it to you, so you don't have to take our word for it. But what I thought was most important about these claims, and these are only 18 of the claims, and I'm going to pick the ones that I believe they've not touched upon. Could you go to the next slide, Shane? All right. I'm sorry. I wanted to point out first, offered free cases, offered free water. Go back to the previous slide, Shane, one more time. Right there. This is one that Mr. Kemp did not discuss, nor Mr. Eglett. Looks like plastic residue from manufacturing a bottle. Analyzed, most likely production oil. Offered to send free water. I didn't even move that time. And so I point this one out because if you have evidence, you're a manufacturer, and you have evidence now that oil is somehow in your product, in a water product, do you do anything? Anything. You'll find out that there was no investigation done on any of these. Now, Mr. Eglett talked about no investigation, and he's correct. But I wanted to show you some of the things in addition to strong chemical smell or gasoline-like substance that should have provoked some form of investigation. When you consider conscious disregard, because again, that's one of the charges, one of the responsibilities you will have as this jury, you have to figure out what should they have done and what evidence is there that they did anything when faced with these very serious complaints. Did they do anything? Oily red substance in the bottle became ill 32 ounces. So we know that real water came home delivery in these types of bottles, right? These are the 5-gallon jugs, home delivery. We also know, like my client, Ms. Bordenave, she was drinking these. And so when you hear or see evidence of these bottles, that's what we're talking about. These bottles being consumed by those clients, our clients, those plaintiffs, and these people becoming sick. Now again, I told you, I like to talk about time and putting things into context chronologically. 2013. The earliest illness here, 2018, 5 years before this, 5 years after. They're getting these complaints 5 years before. Nothing's done. No testing before, no testing after. And this was the mantra. When you have any complaints, same as above, given free cases of water. That's adding insult to injury. You know someone is getting sick with your water, why would you ever give them more of it? Because it's cheaper and more profitable to not investigate. That's what the evidence will prove in this case. Next slide. It's a continuation, but I wanted to show you this. This is Ms. Doran, an older lady, but she was with her parents visiting, 87 years of age. She's getting diarrhea from real water, 2 pets, 1 kid and herself, and her 2 parents. And it talks about the symptoms they suffered from. This lady will come here, you will see her on the stand, or you'll see her by way of video, actually by video. She said that after getting sick, after informing them that her parents were sick, there was no follow-up whatsoever. She sent them a letter trying to encourage them to do something. And she said she was doing it for the benefit of their business, and they still wouldn't do anything. And you'll hear that firsthand. Next slide, Shane. Now, Mr. Egglet talked about the establishment inspection report. This is a report that was done, and you'll see more than one, because there were two forms done. One in the Henderson location, and one in the Real Water location in Mesa, Arizona. So you'll see two. All right, he's just giving me the hand. I have no idea what that means. But I wanted to show this to you, the date. 3/16/21. Okay? The children got sick at the end part of 2020. The vice president got sick October 5th, 2020. I want you to keep the dates in mind. Go to the next slide. These were the 9 findings that Mr. Egglet went over with you. Again, the Southern Nevada Health District was involved and participated in the inspection, in addition to the CDC, which I mentioned earlier, and the FDA. 2 federal agencies, 1 state agency. Next slide. Next slide. I'm not going to read over that again. This is the E2 alkaline that's made in that concentrate that's in every product they make. So it's in the big bottles, it's in the small bottles. So regardless of what you're drinking it from, everyone unfortunately got sick. Now this is something I wanted to point out because Mr. Egglet and Mr. Kemp did not point this out to you. It says here, because the E2 alkaline brand water products are all manufacturing locations, that all Real Water brand bottled water is considered adulterated under the FDC Act. Adulterated. Now, the importance of that, I want you to see in terms of the definition of adulterated. This is what adulterated means when it comes to a food or water product. A violation of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which includes products that are defective, unsafe, not shown to be safe, filthy, or produced under insanitary conditions. This product was a filthy product, marketed to be healthier than any other water product. That's what they were drinking. That's what our clients were drinking. That's why what everyone else who reported sicknesses to the CDC, the FDA, the Southern Nevada Health District were suffering from, having consumed a filthy, adulterated product. Shane? So these are the tests and the test results taken by the CDC and the FDA and the Southern Nevada Health District. They found only 3 tests were taken. Only 3 were taken by the CDC as a part of this investigation. All 3 came back positive for hydrazine. 100%. Not a single test came back not showing hydrazine. You'll hear from our expert that these were some of the highest hydrazine reports he'd ever seen, period. All right, Mr. Johnson, stop it. I figured it out, and I know it's you doing this.
Take off a couple of those mics, man. They can hear.
It's a part of the rules.
Sorry.
That's okay. And this expert has been a consultant for several cities, towns, Coca-Cola, I mean, very large industries, very large, highly populated areas. And he's never seen numbers like this. Next. Again, I want to tie this to time. March 24, 2021. That's when the lawsuit in this complaint was filed. And when the judge said, since 21, here it is. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. You can see it right here. And this is their response, Real Water's response, a month later, roughly, April 21st. Next slide, Shane. Roughly 2 years later, we revised the complaint to add some additional allegations. You can see March 9, 2023. Again, roughly 14 days later, Real Water responds. Now I want you to see the allegations and how they responded to this complaint. This is one of the allegations in the complaint filed on behalf of these plaintiffs. Defendant's bottled water was defective and unreasonably dangerous in that defendant failed to provide warnings about elevated levels of toxins, hydrazine, in their products, the existence of which defendants either knew or should have known about. Now let's see Real Water's response. Answering paragraph 52, you can see this is paragraph 52. These answering defendants deny the allegations contained therein. Next slide, Shane. 2 years later, you can see the allegations here, identical. 2 years later, 2023, again, Real Water denies each and every allegation contained therein. 2023. This is after the FDA has tested their product and determined their product to be adulterated. It's after all the children have gotten sick. It's after the Loma Linda report. It's after the morbidity and mortality weekly report. All of that has come out. All of these people are injured, and they still deny. When I asked you about values, you said accountability. You said responsibility. The evidence will show that they did neither. And until virtually 14 days before we met each other, that's when the judge finally decided that their product was defective, unreasonably dangerous, adulterated, and caused these injuries. 14 days ago. And they objected to that. So when you consider what's conscious disregard, you have to consider this evidence.
Do I object? That's an improper argument.
I'll sustain.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the evidence. Mr. Egglet pointed out the rule in terms of what you'll be charged to do. One of the charges is to determine conscious disregard. And I can see how this evidence is disturbing, because it does paint a true picture of how this tragedy happened. Because they denied, they failed to investigate. They gave free water when their water was getting people sick. Next slide. And this was their final position.
Is that objection, Your Honor? This is improper argument.
Your Honor, this is the pleading.
I understand. I just spoke to it. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the interruption. As I was saying, this is the response just 2 years ago from Real Water. That the plaintiff take nothing by way of their complaint, that the plaintiff's claim the causes of actions alleged against defendants, Real Water, be denied and dismissed for the award of their attorney's fees and costs and expenses, and for such other relief as court may deem just and prevent fraud. That was Real Water response just 2 years ago. Next slide. Again, I want to show you the year. 3/23/23. So just shy of 2 years. The one before it was the original complaint. This was the second complaint and how they responded. First one was in 21, second one was in 23. Their response is the same. And could you highlight the date, Shane? The first one, Second one. All right, thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Thanks. Now, this is the Loma Linda, or as Mr. Kim says, the Burke report. And he says the Burke report for Ardo because Burke was the first author identified on this report. You can see his name right here. So that's why he calls it the Burke report. And both Mr. Kemp and Mr. Eglett referenced this, but I wanted to show you a little more in depth. This. While on recall, real water is still being sold through some online retailers. Here we report the clinical presentation of 4 unpublished cases, but the importance of this evidence will, of course, touch upon how you decide whether or not punitive damages are necessary. Because even after recall, that product is still on the market and still being sold. People are still being affected. Next slide. So the 4 biopsies, 3 men, 1 woman. In the table that I'm going to show you next, I want to point something out to you. Mr. Eglett was talking about how much real water Ms. King consumed. But I want to show you something. Go to the next. This person, patient number 1, suffered permanent fibrosis. Patient number 1 was only drinking real water for 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. And had permanent liver damage. You can only imagine what Ms. King, for years, and everyone else here who had and consumed real water for longer than 2 weeks, suffered. Just 2 weeks. I also want to point out, of the 4 biopsies, 3 of which, fibrosis, fibrosis, fibrosis. 75% of the biopsies resulted in permanent liver injury. Drinking real water. Next slide, please. And again, this is the picture depicting the permanent liver injury, all the blue that Mr. Kemp spoke about. And again, you see here documented fibrosis, fibrosis, and bridging fibrosis, which is the worst. That's where you have the fibrosis connecting and cutting off portal veins. You'll hear from Dr. Hudson just how significant that type of fibrosis is. Next slide. So this is the morbidity and mortality weekly report. It was discussed earlier, and we brought this up because of how important it is in terms of clinical findings, and especially how peaks, you'll see the peaks and the outbreaks of real water and how it affected those who consumed it. And again, I show you the timeline, March 13, 2021. It talks about the investigation. And in fact, Ying Zhang is a PhD who's with the Southern Nevada Health District. Next slide. So this is the chart, and it shows the peaks of non-viral hepatitis, where they're trying to figure out the etiology of all of these liver injuries. But they've noticed the peaks. As we know, in 2020, we had the largest outbreak. Next. Just to give you some context again. These are our 13 clients, and you can see the majority of them fit here in 2020. This is also the same time that the vice president of Real Water got sick. But both Ms. Bourdonnais and Ms. King, and you have JJ here, in 2018. And both of them, of course, have autoimmune hepatitis as a result of consuming real water. Next slide, Shane. Now you'll learn this through some documents I'm about to show you. But I wanted you to see how this lines up with the this chart. 2017, we had injuries. 2018, we had injuries. We have 20 probable and 5 suspected cases from August 19, 2020 to November 29, 2020. In addition to these, we have 23 hospitalizations and 1 death reported. That's how widespread the injuries were as a result of consuming real water. 14 dogs and 1 cat were reportedly consumed and exposed to real water. 11 recovered, 3 dogs died, 1 cat died, in addition to the woman we spoke of earlier. Here's a report. Been a subscriber to Real Water in Las Vegas area for 2 years. In November, my dog died. In March, my second dog was seriously ill. I have been lethargic and have many symptoms I've since learned are liver related. In March 2021, I was seeing double, could barely function, was rushed to the hospital by family, liver markers off the charts. Been at doctor almost every day since. And those aren't our plaintiffs. Those are people who simply turned in their information after being informed of real water. Next slide. So this is the core report. Coordinated Outbreak Response and Evaluation, September of 2021. Again, I'm showing you dates. I want you to be able to consider these dates and then consider the denials by Real Water in this case. Next. And this is what we were just talking about. The reported incidence of dogs being injured and dying, the probable cases, and this is coming from the federal government's investigation. The illnesses, the 23 hospitalizations, the 1 death, all of this is coming from people other than us. This is evidence with only the public safety in mind. Next. I bring this to you because this came straight from the core report. And this is another testimonial, again, not our clients. And it says here, my wife and myself had consumed real water. This is in 2017. We were both treated in ICU for close to a week while they assessed if we needed a liver transplant. The 5 children were taken to Utah because they were thought to need liver transplants. Our clients were taken from hospital to hospital because they were concerned about liver transplants. Ms. Bourdonnais was told, and her family was told, to get her affairs in order because they were so concerned about her being able to recover. It says here, once again, we have been consuming this product since 2017, and we both may have experienced a liver injury in 2018. Coincidentally, again, this came from Ms. Bourdonnais, 2018. And we had similar symptoms which also went undiagnosed as a medical mystery. That's exactly what Mr. Kemp said was happening in 2020. They could not figure out what was causing these children such life-threatening illnesses. Next slide. Completely different person, completely different consumer. This person says after drinking real water, became extremely sick, throwing up, no appetite, fatigue, and nausea. I'm sure you guys have now heard these symptoms repeatedly from Mr. Kemp and Mr. Eglett. And this is what this person was suffering from. Again, liver enzymes were elevated. I emailed the company Real Water back in December 2020, letting them know the water was making me sick, and they did not respond. That's the evidence you'll see repeatedly in this case. No response, despite your client, your customer, getting sick. Next one. Been a subscriber for 2 years. In November, my dog died. In March, my second dog was seriously ill. I kept reading about 5 cases, certainly on the 6th. On 57, 225 pounds, it took me a bit longer. If this was found out about in November, when we actually know it was found out in October, how come they still kept selling this stuff? I'm quite upset and scared. Awaiting more blood test results. Thank you for your efforts. Another customer, sick, reaching out to Real Water, no response. They're still selling it, even after knowing their product is getting everyone sick. Next slide. So this is a chart giving you some dates to consider as you look and listen to the evidence in this trial. Go right ahead, Shane. Let's take it all the way through. Started selling in 2008. We have customer complaints in 2014, 16, 17. We have the failed HACCP inspection. Another failed HACCP. Anthony Randolph, Mr. Eglin talked about him begging and pleading for a recall. Dwayne Jones, October 5th, as I said before, goes to the hospital. 5 children suffer acute liver failure in Clark County, sent to Primary Children's Hospital. All of these things happen, leading to our clients being here today. Next slide. These are some important dates. Again, I've shown you the complaint being filed, the answer being filed, the inspection by the CDC, the FDA, and the Southern Nevada Health District. These are the things that we talked about in Real Water's response. The investigation is concluded in the fall of 21. We have the FDA results of the concentrate showing hydrazine in every sample. We also have the results of the MMWR in the complaints. And then you'll hear just momentarily the deposition testimony of Real Water's own expert, David Goldsmith. The Eurofins testing confirmed. After testing, we tested 7 bottles. 7 bottles. These 3 tests by the FDA weren't enough. So the Eurofins tested 7 bottles like this. All 7 reported hydrazine at various levels. 2 were just below the reporting level, but showed and detected hydrazine. The other 5 way above the reporting level. So out of 10 tests, 7 with this type bottle, 3 with these big, the concentrate, all came back with hydrazine. Every one. And then, as you know, the trial began on the 24th of February. We've gone through 66 depositions in this case to get here. And you'll hear testimony from several of them throughout this trial. Right ahead, Jim. This was the Eurofins testing. As I indicated before, these are over the reporting level. Hydrazine detected, but we're below the reporting level. What you'll find out through our toxicologist is that hydrazine degrades. These tests were taken 2 years after they were bottled, and they were still this high. Our expert will tell you the evidence is that these readings would have been perhaps 10 times higher at the time of bottling, which means when these plaintiffs here were drinking, the level would have been 10 times higher than what you see here. That's how much hydrazine was in this water. And that's why it only took 2 weeks in that Loma Linda report for someone to have permanent injuries to their liver. Next slide. Now this is Real Water's epidemiologist, Dr. David Goldsmith. And as an epidemiologist, he studied outbreaks of injuries and attempts to determine general causation. Again, he was hired by Real Water. And his deposition was taken, and he gave opinions on the significance of this testing and the finding of hydrazine. Shane? And this is when his deposition was taken. Again, I will always show you the dates, so you have an understanding of when these things are happening. Virtually 10 months ago. I'm sorry, almost 2 years ago. Just shy of 2 years by 2 months. Let's hear his testimony.
Do you have any information as you sit here today that would tell us whether those retail bottles with the hydrazine that you just mentioned had hydrazine above the toxicity requirement?
No, I mean, this is what they reported, and they should have had 0. The fact that they had above the limit of detection, at least 4, if not 4, at least 4 out of the 5 positive, says to me that, and I don't want to use this term, but this is the smoking gun that we, concerned with the epidemiology and field investigations, and this matches up with what the FDA chemists found too in other samples of the concentrate that, again, notwithstanding that there may be other contaminants that are detected or found, but this does appear to me to make it much more of a company-wide kind of a concern. And it says also to me that the 5-gallon containers appears not to be the only source of the contamination. This tends to give me a fuller picture, and it suggests clearly to me that the toxic exposure possibly leading to acute liver failure was not solely confined to the 5-gallon home delivery side of the business.
This is their expert, Real Water's expert, saying that this was the smoking gun. These tests confirming hydrazine in the 5-gallon as well as the liter bottles was the smoking gun. It was a Matlock moment, a CSI moment, is what the evidence will show, leading to acute liver failure. And it's the only contaminant. Next. These are our experts. And both Mr. Kim and Mr. Eglett spoke to them. You will hear from them in this trial. When I point this out is that you'll see that we have a quality assurance expert, we have a medical toxicologist, we have an environmental engineer. The evidence, conversely, is that Real Water does not have a water expert, will not bring in a toxicologist, not a single person to explain how hydrazine got into their water. The plaintiffs took on the responsibility of figuring it out. The plaintiffs are here with experts who will explain that to you. That's the evidence in this case. Next. So Dr. Hudson is a professor of medicine and surgery. He is a hepatologist. He's also a gastroenterologist. And he's considered facts of this case, the medical records of all the plaintiffs here, and determined that hydrazine, which was in large bottles, liter bottles, all led to their acute liver injuries. To each one of them. And he's also determined that the Southern Nevada Health District identified numerous cases of hepatic toxicity and liver failure related to the consumption of Real Water, which I've gone over with. And you'll see it more in detail throughout the trial. He will also provide not only their current condition, but their need for future care. Because of the permanency of fibrosis to the liver, they will need to be monitored twice a year for the rest of their lives. Because of the permanency, you never know when their liver enzymes will be elevated, and which would indicate, of course, further damage. So that's something that will be done, something that's medically necessary, he will testify to, and he will also put a cost with that. And this is what I was just discussing. And he believes that a minimum of 20 years. Go right ahead. He will also testify that in terms of Ms. King and Ms. Bourdonnais, real water triggered their autoimmune hepatitis. And obviously, Mr. Eglis explained just how significant that has been to Ms. King. And I will discuss it in part, but Dr. Hudson will completely explain this to you and how tremendous of a diagnosis this is, how this is something that they will never be able to cure or walk away from or even mitigate. There's nothing you can do. It never goes away. So there's a discussion that we'll have with Dr. Hudson where he discusses DILI, which is drug-induced, and this is autoimmune-like hepatitis versus autoimmune hepatitis. He's going to get into the weeds with it. I'm not a doctor. He's explained it, and he will explain it to you because the symptoms are similar, but theirs was caused because of their consumption of real water. And he'll explain that to you. What else he will explain, and I don't recall Mr. A discussing this. He spoke about relapses. But within 4 years, typically, people suffering from this illness will have relapses. More probable than not, we talked about the preponderance of the evidence, they will have relapses. For Ms. King, it could be cutting off of oxygen because of her muscles in her throat, landing her in the ICU. In terms of Ms. Bourdonnais, she could be back at the University of Southern California Keck Hospital receiving medical care. That's how serious this injury is and how permanent it is. Go right ahead, Shane. And this is what I was just speaking about. So, no, go back. So this is Dr. Sands. He's our neuropsychologist. He will discuss how these illnesses affect our clients psychologically. And if you remember this, and you'll get this in terms of his testimony, the evidence that we presented in the trial, but if you can remember Ms. Ward, who sat here with us for 6 days, Ms. Ward talked about the psychological issues that she sees sitting in that hospital with people suffering from illnesses. Dr. Sands will discuss the PTSD that our clients have suffered from. And in fact, I believe Mr. Johnson brought it up in questioning during voir dire yesterday. Go right ahead. And this is what I've been speaking about. Ms. Bourdonnais suffered traumatic events, psychologically because of what she went through. But Dr. Sands will talk about this in terms of all of the things. Go right ahead. One of the things that Dr. Sands will talk about is how he tested Ms. Bourdonnais' cognitive skills and determined deficits. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but Mr. Eglin and Mr. Kemp talked about how this could lead to a foggy type of feel mentally. This is what we're talking about. Unfortunately, the permanency of this injury can lead to a continuation of fogginess. So elevated enzymes, liver enzymes, typically also means that you're having a problem with your liver functioning and removing ammonia from your blood. It concentrates in your head, and you get this dizziness, you get this fogginess, you get this inability to cognitively interact. That's something that she's not going to be able to ever change. Right. And so he's recommended, Dr. Sands has recommended significant further care. Personality inventory, both psychological and psychiatric evaluations are highly recommended. Go right ahead. Each of the plaintiffs should undergo a complete neuropsychological evaluation. And finally, any specific cognitive deficits that are identified and further elucidated should be addressed. And you'll hear about this. And these are problems that they suffer from. Go right ahead. And he's suggesting this for up to 2 years, depending on the results. Go right ahead, Jane. So Ms. Bourdnave, I've spoken about her somewhat. Go ahead, Shane. She was born in Los Angeles, moved to Las Vegas in 2009. She's married. She has 5 children. She's got a BA in Family and Consumer Science, and she has 1 year of pursuing her master's program in education. The love of her life, in terms of her career, was teaching and helping with special needs children. And she did that in Los Angeles, in the school system there, and she did it here in Las Vegas until she became ill because of real water. And in fact, was sent home, went from there to the hospital in February of 2018, and went from hospital to hospital to hospital. You'll see that just in a second. Go right ahead, Shane. And this is the work history I was telling you about. Again, she worked with special needs children in Los Angeles County, then at CCSD, again at CCSD. She came back and worked with a financial advisor, and then moved across Blue Shield. Put them all up for me, Shane, so we can see the history. When I said several hospitals, I really meant several hospitals, and this is the evidence. For 5 days, she was vomiting. She had the symptoms that we discussed about. Finally took herself to the hospital on February 25th. Her AST and ALT were over 2,000. They should be 2-digit numbers. She was taken by ambulance because they were overwhelmed by her symptoms, by ambulance to Mountain View. She was there one day. They realized they can't handle this. She was taken by ambulance from Mountain View to Centennial. She's getting worse. They do a biopsy there. They realize how bad it is. Her ASTs are even higher now, AST and ALT. They finally decide to flight her for life. Flight for life from Las Vegas to USC, the Keck Hospital in Los Angeles, for a hepatology evaluation for acute hepatic failure. So then, that's an ambulance from the hospital to the airport, flight for life to the airport in Los Angeles, an ambulance from the airport in Los Angeles to USC Keck Hospital. That's what she was going through in February 2018. And this lasted until March 11, 2018. And then after that, go right ahead, Shane. After that, and this is a graph of what she was going through. So you have an understanding of what real water put this woman through. All the way up until March 11, 2018, she was in the hospital. They release her, but she's not allowed to come back to Vegas. She's not allowed to come back to her children, her job, because she has continuing obligations to go back to Keck to monitor her. So she stays there another 2 to 3 weeks before coming back to Las Vegas. 3 days later, she's back in the hospital, still in Los Angeles. And then they take her back to Keck. I mean, this is not getting better at all. Finally, you can see her AST, ALTs come down. They're still high. Her INR is high. And she starts to improve. She comes back to Las Vegas. Less than a year later, she's back in the hospital with similar symptoms. 4 months later, she's back in the hospital. And one thing that distinguishes her somewhat is they found a lesion in her liver. 1.1 times 1.1 times 1.4 centimeters long. And you'll see in the evidence in this case that that lesion has grown. The last time they took an ultrasound, I believe it was 1.4 by 1.2 by 1.6. That's a permanent injury to her liver. Next thing. Now these are the medical records, and there are tons of medical records. I'm just highlighting a few of them. just so you can see where these charts are coming from, again, not asking you to take my word for it. 7 days of nausea and vomiting in a patient with no previous medical history. So she had no other problems before her consumption of real water. Next. Nausea and vomiting, jaundice, acute hepatitis, abdominal pain. Again, first day, 2/25/2018. And this is the MRI that finds this 1 centimeter cyst on her liver. Go right ahead. So this is the biopsy procedure. And as you know, in any medical procedure, you're given your risks and benefits. They explain that to you before you agree. You get your informed written consent. In this one, she got informed written and verbal consent. And she underwent a biopsy. It says right here, liver biopsy is above, discussed with patient husband prior to following the procedure. So proof that she had the biopsy. Go right ahead. Findings consistent with acute hepatitis. That's the result of the biopsy. The pieces of this puzzle are being put together by this evidence in such an organized way. And the reason I say that is you got the ultrasound, you got the MRI, you got the biopsy. No prior medical issues based upon the medical records. And the only thing that they find are liver-related injuries based upon all of these tests. The cyst, elevated enzymes, and now the biopsy. Go right ahead. And just like Ms. King, early autoimmune hepatitis. That's what she has. As per recommended by the GI, patient needs to be transferred to a tertiary liver center to be seen by a hepatologist. This is her being discharged from Centennial and being sent to USC because Centennial is not equipped to handle someone with these symptoms. That's how bad she was. And they report how high, greater than 1,000 on both the AST and ALT. INR is also increasing, and it is worrisome for liver failure at this point. Recommended transfer to a liver center for evaluation and closer monitoring. She is just declining. Her symptoms are getting worse. Her condition is declining. Go right ahead, Shane. And now they're worrying about severe sepsis, syncope, and hepatitis. Ambulance is being requested, and this is 3 days after being released from USC. She's still in Los Angeles, and this is what's going on with her. Go right ahead, Shane. And syncope is similar to this fogginess that we were speaking of. The temporary loss of consciousness and the muscle tone caused by a decrease in blood flow to the brain. Syncope can occur due to a number of possible liver conditions, including end-stage liver disease, hepatic cysts, and liver cirrhosis. Everything's falling in line in terms of what's going on with this woman. And this is the Centennial Hills Medical Center record. Again, she's suffering from nausea, vomiting. This is roughly 8 months after after returning to Las Vegas. And she's on prednisone because of her autoimmune hepatitis. Go right ahead, Jim. May 2019, again, same symptoms. And I say this to you so you can see that even a year after her initial, she's still suffering, which is consistent with Mr. Eglin and Mr. Kemp has said about the permanency of these injuries. Go right ahead, Shane. The cyst that we were speaking of, 1 by 1 by 1 by 1 4 centimeters. This is May of 2019. Shane, if you could, go to slide 71. And as I said, it was growing. 1.2 by 1.4 by 1.6 centimeters. It's not getting smaller, even though she stopped drinking real water, just like all of them. She is still suffering from the permanency of having consumed a product with a known liver toxin. '73, Shane. Again, I'm giving you dates so you can see what's going on with her liver enzyme and her INR. These are all higher than they should be. So this is Shane 75. This is Dr. Alcina. This is Real Water's hepatologist. He agrees that Ms. Bourdonnais' AST and ALT were in excess of 2,000. He agrees that they were 2182 and 2995 respectively at Mountain View Hospital. He agrees and accepts that she had a biopsy performed. And he also testified that he cannot rule out the relapse of Ms. Bourdonnais because of her autoimmune hepatitis. And he can't rule out future liver transplant. And that's what Mr. Egglet was just speaking about. All caused by real water. These plaintiffs' lives have been forever changed. So when it comes to compensatory damages, Shane 77. The standard is simply preponderance of the evidence. And as I said before, it's a butterfly on the scale. That's all it takes. When it comes to punitive damages, I want you to consider a few things. And this is the evidence that I believe will assist you in making that determination. Number one, after receiving dozens of complaints, Real Water did not test its product for safety. After Real Water's vice president became ill and its marketing president begged and pleaded for a recall, Real Water did not test its product for safety or issue a recall. After receiving dozens of termination notices, and that's people terminating their subscription to Real Water. Real Water did not test the product for safety or issue a recall. And after the FDA, CDC, and Southern Nevada Health District began its investigation, Real Water refused to cooperate. Now that's what we have not gotten to yet. Real Water's refusal to cooperate. So, next slide. I spoke about the inspection, establishment inspection report earlier. I gave you the date. Showing you this again because part of the inspection required Real Water to cooperate. So, first day of this inspection, records, I'm pointing here. The records were requested on the first day of the inspection on 3/16/21, but not immediately provided. By the second day of the inspection, the Vice President, Blaine Jones, said all records requests would have to go through his attorney. That's his first response to a public safety investigation. Next change. They were informed, Real Water was informed that their product was considered to be adulterated. And this is something that's not been brought up. The Vice President promised correction of all 483 observations and said he would respond in writing. Now, Mr. Egglet was being nice and kind. He showed you 483 observations. Shane. The firm's legal counsel provided us with a statement that between 10/15/20 and 11/15/2020, the manager, Anthony Brown, received 25 to 30 customer complaints of odd tasting water. On April 7, 2021, Mr. Brown stated that 7 to 8 of these complaining customers also reported vomiting. That's coming out of the investigation. Real Water didn't volunteer that information ahead of time. On 4/7/21, Anthony Brown provided copies of 5-gallon delivery account terminations. These are the terminations I was speaking of, listing for Nevada, California, and Arizona, in which customers claim medical reasons for canceling their firm's alkaline water deliveries. Again, no testing, no investigation. Nevada delivery or medical cause terminations listings show a total of 7 account terminations in the year 2019, 7 account terminations between January 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2020, and 23 terminations between October 2020 and March 16, 2021. Together, 37 terminations, and Real Water did nothing. Mr. Blaine stated the firm received numerous consumer complaints around November, reporting an off taste and nausea. Next thing. That's at Henderson. This is the inspection report for Arizona. You can see Mesa, Arizona. Instead of the date 3/16, this is 3/22/2021. Go right ahead, Shane. According to Mr. Brett Jones, president, the firm was established in 1998 or 1999 under the name AffinityLifestyles.com DBA Real Water. The firm changed the name of its business to Real Water in 2018. Per the Wyoming Secretary of State, the firm was domesticated in the state of Wyoming in 2020. The firm was previously located, the firm split in September 2020 and opened the Mesa facility. This is Real Water. Go right ahead. According to Mr. Brown, again, this is not Mr. Egley. This is not Mr. Kemp. These are not my words. These are Real Water employees' words. According to Mr. Brown, the firm does not provide training on food hygiene. That's their words. And food safety to employees, and therefore did not maintain records of training. The FDA was asking for records of training. Mr. Brown also stated he did not have any knowledge of the Food Safety Modernization Act, specifically 21 CFR 117, current good manufacturing practice, hazard analysis, and risk-based preventative controls for human food regulation. That's Real Water having to admit. Next, Shane. We explained to Mr. Brown that under the bottled water regulation, the firm was also responsible for taking and analyzing bottled water for bacteriological testing, specifically coliforms at least once a week, and chemical, physical, and radiological tests at least annually. And we were not provided documents showing the sampling and testing was done. Next. The firm does not have an individual trained in food safety preventative controls as discussed. This means the firm does not have a preventative controls qualified individual. Next, Jane. Now, this comment talks about what Mr. Kemp was saying. They had a secret room where they made this concentrate, where no one else had access. It was so secret that when they were first inspected by the FDA, they didn't tell the FDA that it was there. The FDA found out. This second section is where the mixing of concentrate takes place. During the initial walkthrough, Blaine and Jones told us the processing area consisted only of the main bottling area. He did not tell us that the adjacent section was part of the production, and this section was not included in the diagram provided to the Southern Nevada Health District in the company permit application. So when they turned in their permit application, they didn't inform the Southern Nevada Health District of this secret area. and they didn't inform the FDA. That's how secret it was. That they were hiding it from Nevada public agency and federal public agencies. Although it is included in the lease agreement provided. That's real water. And go back for 1 second, James. And they listed this as one of several refusals by Real Water to cooperate with the investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear about several of these refusals. This deals with Real Water's refusal to actually come and participate as inspections, not showing up. On the second day of the inspection, we met with William Jones at 1 p.m. to accommodate his schedule because he failed to show up on the first day. The facility doors were locked, so no facility inspection was conducted on that day. A refusal from Real Water, knowing the public's interest is at stake, and he doesn't show up. And they're trying to accommodate his schedule. Shane? Ladies and gentlemen, they refused to provide requested processing records, stating that the processing records were lost in the move. Excuse after excuse after excuse to cooperating with the federal government and the state government. Mr. Jones said he would not answer any of our questions, but did show us a section of the building where Real Water concentrate is mixed. This is the evidence in this case. This is Real Water's approach to cooperation. This is Real Water's concern for public safety, given the evidence in this case. Now, we're not required to provide evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, just clear and convincing. And I will tell you, given the evidence in this case, what you've seen already and what you will see presented at trial, it's overwhelming. Next. Mr. Jones declined to provide any of the requested documents to the inspection team. As justification for his denial, Mr. Jones claimed two excuses. The firm's chemical supplier would not be able to provide any documents until Monday, and the firm's legal counsel still needs to review all of the requested documents before they're released to the FDA. That's Real Water's response to an investigation by the FDA and the Southern Nevada Health District. Knowing that we have children at this point that have gone to Utah with life-threatening liver diseases, and that's their response. Go right ahead. Finally, Mr. Jones says that the firm's ionizing process, Mr. Kemp loves to call it the juicing process, was intellectual property purchased by his father, and he did not want to reveal the procedure in front of Mr. Brown, his own employee. That was their justification for not sharing this process that was causing people to get sick. Next, Shane. Clear and convincing is the standard for punitive damages. The evidence in this case, in our opinion, would break that scale. You've all been very patient, and I know this has taken a long time today. But there's a lot of evidence in this case. We wanted to give you a roadmap. I wanted to give you time so you could understand what was happening and when it was happening, and how we've gotten here. Thank you so much. I didn't need
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're on track as far as today's concerned. We will finish up right now, so let's get ready to go home. You have to remember, I have to, lead to the recess admonishment. As far as tomorrow's concerned, we'll reconvene at 10:30. And so remember, you're admonished not to converse amongst yourselves with anyone else on any subject connected with this trial, or to read, watch, or listen to any report or commentary on the trial of any persons connected with this case. or by any medium of information, including telecommunications, newspaper, television, radio, and remember the social media prohibition. Last but not least, do not form or express any opinion, and then the subject matter connected to this trial or cause is going to be submitted to you. I kind of anticipate probably at 10:30 or so, defense counsel, Mr. Johnson, will give his opening statement. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, so we'll see you in the morning.
All right.
Travel safe.